Hello and welcome to PBCJ Presents, our weekly current affairs discussion program where we take a deep dive into matters affecting Jamaica land we love. I'm your host Maya Chung, and the topic this week is tourism. My guest today is the Minister of Tourism, Edmund Bartlett. Welcome, sir. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you very much, Maya.
I am so heartened by what I heard recently that not only is the nation rebounding through tourism from the fallout, economic and financial, caused by the COVID pandemic, but recently, quite recently, you said we were gonna do it, but we're gonna do it even faster. When you say even faster, what was that? What is the time we're gonna save, and how is that humanly possible?
Yeah, well, we did predict that we would recover to 2019 levels by 2024. Well, in 2022, we started to see pre-COVID levels on a monthly basis, starting in the month of June. So June against June 2019 was higher. July, August, September, October, November, December, now January, February, March. So we are now completing our first real winter season since COVID, and we are 5% ahead of 2019.
All right.
And I think that is a real tribute to the workers of the industry, the stakeholders, the government, and the ministries, particularly those that have direct interfacing with tourism, like transportation and health and security and local government and culture, so on. These are very, very critical partners to enable the product, one, and two, the seamlessness of the experience.
Let me say this though, you know that even though this is correct, and kudos to all of us, because it's all Jamaicans playing a part, and you have to give credit where credit is due. You know that you're even more faster becoming the Michael Jackson of recovery and resilience. Michael will say, I have a great guitarist, you'll say X and Y. It can't just be, you know, we just are here. What is happening to drive this quickness? Because COVID is still happening.
Yes, it is. And I think
what are we doing so right?
It began because we knew that it was important to build resilience. We needed to understand what phenomena hit us from time to time, what possible phenomena can hit us. I mean, certainly we are accustomed to dealing with hurricanes and earthquakes and so on. But we have also been accustomed to dealing with health issues like epidemics. But a pandemic of the nature that we had was something of a different order, as it was of a different magnitude.
And it's still here.
And it is still there. So understanding that you have to mitigate, you then have to manage. And the two elements of mitigation and management is to give you a sense of what are some of the things you need to do to reduce the effect. So here comes the epidemiology discussions as to how to deal with the environment, the public health arrangements and so on. How to educate people to do better with themselves. The basic health and hygiene issues, you know, that you must take care of, because much of it begins there. Mm-hmm. It begins with that foolish bacteria, you know, and that virus that ends up coming to you. And then we have to do some bigger issues now of how do you manage? How do you get the communications right when something happens? How do you...
Quick response.
Right, how do you bring the whole of society together to act collectively?
Coalesce them around a common goal.
So we were able to do that with a great degree, I think, of alacrity and ease in tourism, because we were all down to ground zero. You know, everybody was in the same position. It doesn't matter how big and strong and rich or poor you were, everybody was in the same position. And so we benefited from sharing ideas. We benefiting from learning from each other as we go along. And we also benefiting from following rules. I think that was a very important lesson that COVID
to Jamaican people who are not known to be rule followers.
We learn how to follow rules. We learn that COVID was saying that the science dictated that you keep distance, so you keep your distance, that it was about sanitation all the way, you know, so you dealt with that. It was about making sure that you don't hug, so you don't hug. It makes sure
sanitize,
physical contact and so on.
Masks.
Absolutely. You know. So we all ended up doing something else. We end up yielding some of what we call our own personal sovereignty.
How do we get it into society so Jamaica can become better?
Better, I tell you, firstly, it's about education and public education. It's about our getting a sense of what are the ideas that you need to create the mix of understanding as to why you should do what you do and what the outcomes are, you know.
Is it fair to say that using fear, because people were afraid? The
Well,
fear seemed to drive us into yielding to personal.
You're absolutely right.
But we can't public educate.
Yeah.
Too much fear.
So there's a mix, because at a point in time, fear disappeared when the inevitable was facing you. It was no longer fear, it was now action is needed. We gotta save ourselves. So, you know, it moved beyond fear, and now it had to do with how do you preserve life and limb, and how do you stay alive. It is you know, it became
how
that.
do we jump this hurdle and move towards it? Because what one person said was, after year one when we shut down, everybody was scared, running up and down in a panic. That was understandable. It wasn't unique to us, as you said, ground zero. But then people marched past 2020 and people still had to pay their light bill. Then August passed and water bills were still due. So people saying, oh, we're contending with this, but life is going on, so we have to survive.
Right.
We have to survive well. We can't be dead at the end of the survival. That is an oxymoron, and I deliberately stated it like that.
No, you're absolutely right, because that was the balance now between wellness and well-being. And so we had to make the choices. And I think for our part, it was the leadership of Prime Minister Holness that really kept things together. I mean, he was very focused. As a leader, he was unwavering in terms of his commitment to doing the right things for us. We had to set up new rules. We had to forego some rules, and we also had to make up new arrangements as we went along. It was an iterative process. But what happened is that we got a chance to overcome our fears as a result of our compliance with the various protocols, because what in each instance it did was to give us a statistical reference that made us more and more comfortable.
Data, facts.
Data. So each week when, you know, Ministry of Health puts out the report, you look and you say, oh, thank God, we're a little better than we were before, or, you know, we've receded.
The strategies must be working.
That's correct. So those are very important points to build confidence and to enable us to overcome that fear factor. And once we started to overcome it, like establishing, for example, the resilient corridor, and to have results out of that corridor which were way ahead of the national outturn, we began to feel confident that yes, the visitor can come. Yes, the tourists can come back.
Yeah.
Right, and so it happened. And within a year, we had 1 million visitors.
Sir, let me ask you. So we are not gonna have to wait until 2024. In terms that the man in the road can understand, you had said recovery at its fullest by 2024, but we're gonna we're gonna, is it overshoot or undershoot? We're gonna get it earlier. So what is that?
No, so we're overshooting.
Overshoot. Right.
So we have already recovered 2019 numbers by way of stopover arrivals
Yes.
and are ahead, and we have also recovered now in terms of earnings, revenue, way ahead. We're excited about the revenues because that's the basis on which, you know, the well-being is predicated. And yesterday I was indicating that in 1 year, just in 2022, you know, the $51 billion of revenue went straight to the coffers of the government from just the act of a visitor arriving and staying in a hotel, full stop. Not the food he eats, not the absolutely, not the tour, not the anything else. So when we put all of that together, we saw why the economy was growing. Because what tourism does is to bring, you know, revenue to everybody. And so Ray and nephew was back in business, you know, and have a problem.
Were they out? I'm just kidding because we needed something to self-medicate.
Red Stripe was back in business, you know. Our farmers were back in business. I remember in the pandemic, we had to be buying off their stock. The Tourism Enhancement Fund
keep them alive.
bought their stock just to keep them alive. No, we have issues trying to supply on the demand in the industry. So these are the important things that happen. So the economy which we thought was going to fall apart was able to grow consistently for the 8 to 9 quarters since then. And we continue to grow because this first quarter of the year is going to also show growth.
We take a break at this juncture. You're watching PBCJ Presents. My guest is Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett. Stay with us. Minister Bartlett, I spoke with you earlier this year on it has exponentially. You are everywhere talking and communicating. You just returned from a trip.
Yes.
You're giving advice, you're taking advice, but people are referencing in their own media the Jamaican recovery. What is that like to you, and what was the trip like that you just returned? Where did you go? Give us those details.
Well, you're right from the point of view that Jamaica has been used as a reference point for recovery. And it's the way in which you recover. It's not just the fact that you recover because you didn't close like some friends of ours in the region. You recovered because you did the right things. You recovered because you followed the rules and the protocols by and large. It is true that we never quite made it in terms of the vaccination quota.
I was going to say we were being criticized. So at one point we were like the...
But we were careful to make sure that the productive
aspects
quotient of our population was vaccinated. If you really get down to it, most of the workers, you know, were vaccinated. In the tourism sector, for example, we were running at 80% vaccination. So other segments of the workforce also had that kind of level of vaccination. So as a result that there was this high level of vaccination within the productive forces, we were able to move forward and to get the results.
So instead of a wholesale fear mongering and just wiping it out, because people should have had choice to vaccinate or not, you targeted it in the essential areas. It's like doing surgery. You're not going to do brain surgery and take out the kidney.
Right.
So the government of Jamaica led and said, listen, essential services, you have to keep the police on there to police the
frontline workers.
Yes, if you're keeping your job, mandates are this, rule following, yield, and that worked.
But you know something?
It's a blueprint.
I think we need to write an account of Jamaica's recovery. Certainly for tourism, we have done some work. There's a book that I co-edit with Professor Waller at the university, which is a compendium of scholarly articles on the whole recovery and resilience and so on. But there's a chapter that I I wrote in terms of our experience.
It's already out?
Yes, it's out. It's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon, or you can Google and see. So that we use a bit when I travel, and even in Washington, I gave a copy to the executive director for COP28, and also, of course, the president of IDB and so on. So they have a sense too of how, and George Washington University that we're partnering with now for the next Resilience Center to be established will be in Washington at the George Washington University. And just to make a point about the Resilience Centers, because that was something, you know, that was a statement of almost prophetic nature, that little Jamaica, we could see that these disruptions are going to come, and that within 2 years of establishing the center.
I remember when you told me and I asked if you were a prophet.
You know,
and you said
you
yes.
had a global disruption at the magnitude of COVID-19. So now we have about 8 centers around the world that are active, and we have another 13 to establish over the next few months in almost, you know, most countries. We have in the United States, we have in Canada, we have in the UK, we're going to be having in Japan shortly, and it's also Spain. We have in Africa,
Yes.
in Nairobi. We're doing one for South Africa. We're doing one for Botswana. We're doing one for Sierra Leone and Rwanda.
Where you were recently,
Yes.
Sierra Leone.
No, but the ministers were with me. Remember when we had the African Caribbean Summit?
Yes.
Right. A number of these African ministers came, and the Sierra Leone minister was one. Very brilliant woman. She has a triple PhD, and you know, used to be a lecturer at the university before. Yeah, she joined tourism. So what we're seeing then is that we're really building a confluence of resilience-driven academic centers that can help the world to manage better, to anticipate these disruptions, to mitigate, to manage, and then recover. And the key of recovery is to recover quickly. It's not just to recover.
Well.
Several countries have had these disruptions, and years after, they're struggling to be.
Floundering.
Exactly. Haiti is a good example of this. And
we-
the problem with it is that you end up becoming unmanageable in time. If you don't recover fast enough, other social issues step in.
Start to push you out. Yeah, quite.
So-
How does this move forward to other areas of development?
Right. So there's something called edutourism, which is about education, tourism. And this is a great opportunity for us to tap in that element of the market. We're not monetizing it from the point of view now of saying you have a contribution to make or a fee for setting up a center. We're not doing that. We are offering...
It would be anti-diplomatic?
Well, it's out of our realm. But what we're doing is we're saying that this is Jamaica, and this is what Jamaica's offering is. And the benefit of it now is the flow of visitors to us, because people are interested in Jamaica for reasons like these and more. And people travel, as you say, to fulfill their passions. Now, their passion is about sustainability and resilience, and their passion is to know more and to understand better how you have been able to manage. And they come.
Not so little and not just a thrive.
Exactly. And when they come, they spend, and that's what we do, you know. So in addition to that, it gives us a face and some level of notoriety out there. It says to the world, Jamaica is a place you should check out.
We become the consultants.
Yes, you know, they have some people who talk these things. They have great runners, yes, check them out. They have great musicians, yes, check them out. They have great intellectuals, check them out.
They have great survival skills.
Check them out. That's the point.
I
They
love
see
that.
the Caribbean, for example, as being, yes, the most tourism-dependent region on earth, but successful, because the economies of the Caribbean are not in a state of absolute disrepair as they are in a number of other regions.
That's a good word. That's just shambles.
And tourism has been the driver for most of the 28 countries in the archipelago. So we have something to offer. And now that Africa, for example, is going big time into tourism, I mean, almost every country now is having a tourism minister, which is something they never had, you know.
When I came to the global tourism, everybody was passionate. Tourism, and they sounded like you, because I've been hearing these things from you over the years. It's not like your first audio. And they were, look at Jamaica. They were sad. It was all females who came.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. And they were passionate, and they saw in us what they want to
That's
be
correct.
and become. And it was very a prideful moment, and it was packed.
But there's something else that these engagements do. They offer opportunities now for investment.
Exactly.
Because people noting what you're doing here and looking at the success you've had want to be part of that success. And so they choose to come and to invest in new assets that you need. They also come to invest with joint partnership,
It's wise. Help Jamaica to help the rest of the world. It's all of us benefit.
So this is the value of building your intellectual assets. And there's a new argument, which really isn't all that new, but is the argument that the real culprits in the global warming issues and really this climate change discussions are not the little guys who are the huge victims of climate change. It's the big guys whose footprints are enormous in terms of the carbon usage. And so what we have happened is that we have to say to them, you have a responsibility. So the argument is that they who are contributors should pay, and should pay disproportionately to the others. And so the whole loss and damage fund argument with trillions of dollars in it. But as the president of the IDB said on the weekend when we were there in Washington, everybody's talking these big numbers, but nothing is happening. You know, nobody's identifying the project, and the whole issue now of implementation is the matter at hand. So we were able to talk about implementation. And
Jamaica.
Yes, and to put our own notion of what needs to be done, primarily because we are a region of people. We have no major natural resource. We have no oil, no gold, no major mineral. The bauxite we had, well, you know the story with that. What we have are people. So the investment we want is in people. You need to start to invest in ideas. That's how innovation is going to happen. That's how we're going to add value to this whole process and become wealthier and richer by having new, exciting ideas.
And at this juncture, we take a break. You're watching PBCJ Presents. I'm your host, Maya Chung. My guest is Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett. After this, we will return with more. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching PBCJ Presents. The topic is tourism. My name is Maya Chung, and my guest is Minister of Tourism Edmund Bartlett. Sir, before the break, we were looking at investing in people, and it's a natural segue into this idea that I've heard of multilateral banks. I don't know if I've gotten it right. Can you explain if I've gotten, what is this concept? How are the funds going to go into people? Break it out for me, please.
Oh, no. Well, the multilateral institutions are, of course, set up by the very powerful, rich, industrial countries of the world, primarily, for the purpose, I think, of enabling marketing, of facilitation and market development in a number of countries. Because the principle is we have to find place for the manufactured goods. And we are manufacturing, but we can't be selling to ourselves alone. And much of the market that we have is lacking in certain key infrastructure. So here comes the multilaterals to offer loans at reasonable rates over a long period of time for huge development of airports, you know, shipping facilities, ports, docks, you know,
And
hospitals, schools, you name it, right? But to our discussion, only in recent times have attention been paid to tourism, so that tourism was never on the radar of these multilaterals until recently. And I think the post-COVID recovery activities across the world and the world economy is making a focus now on tourism much more important and sharp, in that the countries that are recovering fastest are the ones that have tourism as an important part of their economy. When you look at how the Caribbean itself has recovered since then, we are among the higher end of recovery, you know, in the world. And again, it is because of tourism. Countries that are far more resourced than we are less developed in terms of recovery at the moment. So the discussion that we had was, okay, how can we facilitate this more? And how can we move some of what is happening in your part of the world to other places so that their recovery can be faster? The job that you have is a job which involves the world. To bring the visitors here, you can't stay here. And in going to their places, you need to show interest in what they're about. A big part of marketing is to transfer your emotions to them and their emotions to you.
So ignite their passion towards us.
So the feeling is that you care, and you're just not there to take a dollar, but you're there to help them to find themselves and to achieve.
Which is why it wouldn't be prudent to obviously monetize, but to collaborate and to grow.
So primarily that's what happened. But also technology has played a big role in recent times in terms of our own ability to connect with destinations and also to remain connected to our base. And for my good fortunes, I have some wonderful, amazing team players, fabulous workers who have been, you know, just really outstanding. And the Ministry of Tourism has a permanent secretary there, Jennifer Griffiths. I have Delano Seawright, who is well known, and then we have a number. And you know, once I start to call name, I run into trouble. But all of our directors of the agencies and the chairmen of our boards, who have really been more than ordinary chairmen, they have been, you know, really immerse themselves into the operation, making sure that these entities run efficiently and well. So we've benefited from that, and so to the extent then that they have come up to the table, it has enabled me to not appear to be neglecting what we need to do because of where you have to go.
This process is an iteration, the evolution. You see this work, you tried this, we have 13 more resilience centers coming up. What is your closure for this particular time period? Because there's gonna come another time when we have to talk.
So I wanna close this section by pointing to the fact that the recovery, as strong and vibrant as it is not without challenges. And there are significant challenges that we have to face, and so it's a constant innovation that you have to engage. It's constant iteration and adaptation and being nimble. In other words, to each occasion that you are faced with a situation, you must have an idea as to how to deal with it. You must have an idea as to how to pivot and how to adapt, as you correctly say, and add value, which is critical. So the call is for us to hone our skills, to get more knowledge, just get knowledge, more information.
And you're talking to Jamaican people.
Absolutely. And then get the sense of how to convert those ideas and that knowledge into now material applications that will add value and change the game for you.
All right, outside of, I have one final. outside of programs like these, the obvious news reports, you spoke to public education. Is there going to be a concerted development? We talked about things like even your bodily hygiene, interacting. These are not non-issues, they are the issue. Is there, with the resources coming in, the quicker recovery, okay, we don't have to spend so much time over there. Is there going to be mounted by the end of the year a public education plan for Jamaicans to understand and to adhere? We don't need the fear. We don't need the fear of God, and we don't want to go back there. Do we have plans for that? Is it in the dialogue? We have to educate the people on the ground, because as you said, without the people, the gold, the oil,
right.
Is there something coming?
I think there is a huge public education program that has to be carried. And the good news is that it's being shared by the various portfolio areas in government, and JIS has a huge role to play over in that area. The Minister of Information is very, very attuned to that. Minister of Health does an excellent job as it stands with it. You know, local government, and all the ministries. I see Minister Minister Chuck, for example. Yes, he's out there on the road every day with his restorative justice and public education. The Minister of Security, you know, with his team, they are out there. So everybody is out there, and together we believe that we can break the back of this fear factor and to drive, instead of fear, confidence.
I think that is an excellent note. Confidence all the way. Minister Bartlett, it's always a pleasure to have you on PBCJ Presents. Thank you. Keep up the fantastic work. You have been watching PBCJ Presents. I've been your host, Maya Chung. My guest has been the Minister of Tourism, Edmund Bartlett. Stay tuned for more programming on this station.